we now focusing actually not just 4, there are 5 areas that we are focusing when TDM is implemented. The first is, as we talked about, the prime critical one, which is sensitiveness. So we need to ensure the data is properly masked, and there are different methods available like lookup, scrambling, shuffling, all those things. And as I told, the important thing is when we use tools available in the market, they use these techniques to ensure the sensitiveness of the data is taken out, but at the same time, the business nature of the data is retained, because we are either using some scrambling method or lookup method to replace with the non-sensitive information, but other informations can be retained. So this is related to data masking. The other thing, as I told, data coverage. So when you are taking data from production, you may not have coverage of all kinds of testing, especially if you are doing a negative test cases. The production data may not be having that negative data. Also, if you are doing some enhancement, or even if you are creating a new application, you may not have the data required for your testing if you just rely on a production data. So here the synthetic data comes in. Basically, there are tools available in the market which can actually generate the data in the format required, and you will actually will not realize that the data generated is a generated data. It will almost look like how the data looks in a production system. So data masking, data manufacturing. Now we have the data available in a central place. Generally, we keep it in a place called cold copy, and then the data is now available for provisioning. So before provisioning, there are a lot of places where they need a data subsetting to be done, because it is not always required to provision the entire data set to a test environment. They may need probably some 6 months of data, or they may say I need a 5,000 customers data, or even they may do some sub vertical level. For example, if I am having my core banking data, for some testing I may only need customer data, or I may only need credit card information or loan information. So they don't need the entire data to be available when they are testing a specific business region. So that in that place we will be doing the data subset before actually provisioning the data in the test environment. So the next step is, now I have the data masked, and also I ensure data coverage is there with the synthetic data, and now I also ensure data is subset based on the business requirement. Now it is ready for data deployment, and this is the place where the CDB comes in picture. Basically, wherever the data needs to be provisioned, we can just use the CDB tool to provision the data without actually deploying the data. By just virtually deploying, we can provision it in minutes, and the user now have n number of test environments. Even we can provision one test environment per user, per tester, and they will be able to test the data without impacting others. And the last segment in this focus area is data management. This is critical because now we talked about the technical factors of a TDM like data masking, data manufacturing, subset, and deployment. But the data management is non-technical, I mean non-functional, but it's a key factor in provisioning the data, because you need to have a proper management of test data so that it will be easier for the testers to provision the data. So we should be able to have some provision available to configure the subset requirements, and we need to know, if I have to do the data masking, we need to know how to configure how to identify a sensitive data. So that means we need to define the data patterns for identifying. And also, if I have to do some data manufacturing has to be done, I need to know what are all the business rules so that we can create data which will satisfy the business rule. So all those require some web UI or a format through which we can manage the data. So these are all the 5 focus areas when a TDM is implemented for an organization.